oldest Hakka woman in Vienna, Austria, 97 years old. She was born in Mejo and lived astronaut families, which means the families are spread all over the continent and all over the continents, all over the world. Wait a moment. Okay. So the situation is becoming a little bit less clear and foreseeable in these days. Europe is a place with relatively small countries with different national languages, and there are minority languages. Okay, everything okay.
Yes, Professor.
In some countries,
think...
there is societal bilingualism, for instance, in Belgium or Switzerland. People arrive typically and establish smaller collectives in urban settlements, which is an individual multilingualism, which is now prevalent everywhere. In Europe, it is in principle very important to be competent in a standard national language, in written and spoken form. This is a little bit too hard on migrants who can typically not acquire a language as adults so well that they fit in this requirement.
Hi, Professor Ruff. Hi, Professor Ruff. I have a suggestion here. Maybe I can share the PPT on your behalf so that you can close your video sharing to ensure
I cannot hear you at the moment. I'm sorry.
Okay. Hi, Professor Ruff. Can you hear me now? Hi, Professor.
Yes.
Yes. I have a suggestion here. Maybe you stop your video sharing.
Wait a moment. I will change computer.
Oh, okay.
I cannot hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I try to start another computer. Maybe the connection is better. I don't know. No, that's not the link. I'm very sorry. I don't know what's the trouble. So 087573. Okay, I try to come in from another side.
Hi, Professor Ralph.
Yeah, could you let me in with another computer?
Yeah,
I try to
we
change.
can.
Yes.
Yes, but the connection seems to be still not very stable. Maybe I suggest maybe we can you can stop the video sharing and I share the PPT on your behalf so that you can have a smoother connection. Maybe we can try this solution. Hi, Professor Ralph, I can't hear you. Maybe you need to unmute. Sorry, Professor Ralph, I still can't hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Maybe I can share the PPT on your behalf.
Let us try with this computer. Hopefully this is better. I wanted to do it on this laptop because it has a better video quality, but I seem to have a bad Wi-Fi connectivity here. Maybe it's a new laptop. I wasn't used to that. So I try to do it from here. I'm sorry for the interruptions. Maybe I have to find a way to still. Can you see now?
Yes, no problem. Can.
Okay, thank you. So let's hope that this works better. I'm very sorry for that. I will leave on the other computer. So, okay. So I was trying to explain the general linguistic problem of migration in Europe. And for schools, it is also a challenge because now a majority of children in many cities does not actually speak the national language of the country well. And that leads to new challenges for schools. Now, when speaking about the Netherlands, I have to explain the economic and political union of these three countries, which is Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, and they call themselves Benelux. You may have heard that. Their autochthonous linguistic situation is such that there is a French-speaking part here in Belgium. There is a trilingual speaking area in Luxembourg. They speak French, German, and their own dialect. There are Germans here, and these dialects of Dutch are actually dialects of these West Franconian languages coming from Germany. However, the speakers of these dialects have become speakers of Standard German, and the speakers of these languages have become speakers of Standard Dutch. In this area, the dialects are very weak. In Belgium, the dialect differences are bigger. Lower Saxon is considered a dialect of Dutch in Holland, but actually it is related to the dialects spoken in the north of Germany. Frisian is a language close to English, but there are only few speakers left. You can say that you need to learn Dutch if you live in this area. So these countries have very high numbers of Maghrebin Arab, Arabic speakers from North Africa and Turkish people. The Chinese, in comparison, are very few people. Where do the Dutch Hakkas come from? First of all, due to the colonial history, quite a few of the Hakkas come from Suriname in South America. And these people are also quite mobile, so it may happen that they lived in other islands of the Caribbean. For this reason, the Hakkas from this area also speak Sranan and Dutch fluently. And when they have lived, for instance, in Curaçao, then they may speak Papiamentu, another Creole language. These people are already multilingual. Another huge group of Hakkas comes from Hong Kong and the adjacent areas, so basically from the Shenzhen area, for instance, from Taipang. As you may know, in the new territories of Hong Kong, there are many Hakka villages, and after Second World War, very many people from these places moved to the United Kingdom or to the Netherlands and established themselves there. For this reason, many villages in this area here are empty or almost empty. The Chinese writing system, you know that, is peculiar insofar as it is to some degree pictographic, and it is not necessary to have the same pronunciation for writing. And this is actually what was the usage of the written language before. It was written by and large the same, but it was pronounced differently. And that plays an important role in the assessment of linguistic competence of Chinese dialect speakers, of course. Chinese itself is, in the meantime, a polycentric or pluricentric language, which means it has several centers for standardization. So there are standard differences between the People's Republic, Taiwan, Malaysia, and other communities. The Chinese migrants who arrived earlier than the 1980s or 90s may not yet have been socialized in Putonghua or Guoyu or Huayu, however this is called, and may just speak their so-called Fangyan. And as you know, the Fangyan are not mutually understandable, so that there are natural subgroups of Chinese migrants everywhere. All the speakers in the Netherlands that we have interviewed identify as Hakkas or half Hakkas, as Dutch citizens, they all have citizenship, and as ethnic Chinese. The Hakka identity seems to be strictly ancestry and family related, and therefore also has the weakest stand in this list. So it is said there are almost 80,000 Chinese in the Netherlands, and we do not know how many of these are Hakkas. The estimates of the speakers is vastly different. One speaker estimated 20 to 30,000 Hakkas in Holland. Another one said more than 10,000, but other publications.
Hi, Jai, could you please unmute the participant?
Could you please what?
Jai, could you please help to mute the participant?
Okay. Can you still see my presentation?
No problem.
Okay, fine. Estimates from Asia said 1,200 to 2,100, and that is probably more realistic. So these are not numbers as you are used to in Malaysia. Now, the Chinese migrants as such, many come from Hong Kong and Guangdong, so some of these are Hakka speakers. In the newer times, almost all Chinese who still arrive in Europe are from Zhejiang province, specifically from Wenzhou and Qingtian. They speak their respective Wu dialects, and that's a dialect which is quite prevalent these days in Europe. For the Netherlands, as I mentioned, people come from Suriname or from Indonesia, and astonishingly also from Hong Kong. There is a Chinese association, the Benelux Zhongzhin Hakka Association, connected to the Zhongzhin World Hakka Association. And this group is very active under the leadership of Theo Chang and Martina Ho as secretary. And they helped us actually access so many people and find the Hakkas in the various cities of the Netherlands. These associations, or Huiguan, in the beginning, of course, were a help for newcomers, but same as in Malaysia, they do not play that role. They are now more like cultural associations, keeping up the memory of their common Hakka ancestry. As you can see, contrary to Malaysia, where there are more precise Huiguan, like Jiaying, Huiguan, and so on, this is not possible in Europe. So it is an all Hakka association with around 200 members. The European-born Chinese, so the next generations, very often have only little interest in an identity as Hakka or similar, and may simply conclude they are Chinese Dutch, so ethnic Chinese Dutch nationals. The Hakka language, by and large, that's the result, is usually not maintained into the next generations. It is gone at the third generation at the latest. However, and that's interesting and has been mentioned in other publications before, many shift to speaking Cantonese as a family language in the Netherlands. So we performed long interviews, let people tell their whole life story and so on. We tested their linguistic competence by shifting languages, and we attempted to apply a linguistic questionnaire for which we got 115 respondents. That is not enough for giving any statistical data, but we can still see the trend with the absolute numbers. As you can see here, we managed to interview 47 members of Zhongzhin Association, and we met 64 non-members. And so we could ask, if you like, a quarter of the members of the Zhongzhin Association, who was quite happy and interested in our investigation about their members. So now to the analysis data. First of all, if we look at the age group distribution, we can see that the association has a similar problem to Huiguan in Malaysia. the members are rather old, and the non-members we managed to interview were typically younger. So younger people have less interest in joining the Hakka association. The young people were difficult to approach because they were often not very much interested in that. They also had very little knowledge, as you can see from these interview snippets, in their historical family background. One man even refused the questionnaire because he said he is not a Hakka, and he did not know that his father was a Hakka. If we look at educational level, we can again see that, of course, the old people who migrated have the rather lower range of education, but the people who were born in Holland, in the Netherlands, usually have higher education. That shows you that migration, of course, leads to a social downgrade of people, but the Chinese are usually very successful in school and business. The old people, of course, told us about their many problems of getting an education back in those times. The educational language of the people, as you can see, was mostly a kind of written Chinese for the oldest people, and Dutch for everybody below, for many people below 60. So this clearly is the second generation already. We don't have enough Malaysian and Indonesian data. There are only 5 people, as you can see. We didn't get back many questionnaires from this group. What actually do people mean when they say Chinese? That is not always clear, and this has to do with the fact that normal people usually consider only standard national languages as a language. Dutch, Hakka, is a language which does not even coincide with the Chinese province. And so, and then at the same time, for the Southerners, Cantonese is a kind of lingua franca. So when a speaker here says, I speak Zung Wun, and we ask back, you mean you speak Cantonese, right? And he says, yeah, Gong Dong Va, yeah, yes, Cantonese. So it is a little bit tricky to find out what people mean by saying Chinese. Maybe I shorten a little bit because we lost time. Most of the Hakkas that we could ask are from Hong Kong and Guangdong, followed by Suriname. And very few from Indonesia and Malaysia. And so when we say, where are you born? Then you see the old people were mostly born either in China or in Hong Kong. And then quite a few in Suriname. And we get here 8 more people, no, 10 people from Indonesia and Malaysia. And the young people, of course, are all born in the Netherlands. Only 3 Zhongzhin Hakka Association members are actually born in the Netherlands, so second generation. There are many more problems which I have put here, such as the people speak the dialect of Dapang, which is not quite Hakka nor Cantonese, some kind of mix between these. And so such speakers have even less opportunity to use their own language. And now it's very interesting that people report that they abandoned speaking Hakka already at a young age back in Hong Kong or in Shenzhen and shifted over to Cantonese and to some degree to Putonghua. And so the wife ponders that the husband speaks only Cantonese with her, but he speaks Hakka with her family. So that is, of course, clear. Many Hakka speakers speak Hakka mostly to the old people, but not to their peers and younger people. Yeah. Maybe we speak about which languages do you know, and here we find that of our sample, 71 say they speak Hakka, 74 speak Chinese, 84 know Cantonese. And of course, everybody has some working knowledge in Dutch, and English is also quite important in the Netherlands. So by age group again, of course, So here, by age group again, we see that the Chinese language is going strong among the older people, and English and Dutch is stronger among the younger people. If we look at three large age groups, so we see that the old people speak Hakka, but the younger generations much less. Chinese is in the increase and Cantonese as well. English is much more important now. And of course, Dutch is, the young people are fully competent. German is also on the rise among the age groups. So the people who come from Suriname do not fear that Hakka might be abandoned by the speakers. Hakka is in full swing in Suriname and other places. However, they also naturally learn Papiamentu or Sanan. Again, we have a problem with the terminology. Many people do not really have a name for this language, for example, and we'll call it Suriname. The people who are from Indonesia have the problem that they haven't learned any Chinese back in Indonesia. And so they came speaking Indonesian, which they consider not useful, and Hakka. So they had bigger troubles with language than other migrants. At the same time, because they have no contact to Cantonese, they do not mix that well with the Zhongzhin members, because in the Zhongzhin Association, Cantonese is clearly dominant in the spoken interactions. So we can conclude Hakka is strictly a family language for the people. Chinese and Cantonese seem to surface as ethnic languages of a societal subgroup. The people attempt to learn this language, either at schools or they learn Cantonese from their family, and they have an interest in that. Of course, they are fully competent in Dutch, and most people in Holland can speak English anyway. So when we see where are the languages learned, we see Hakka only in the family, very little with school and friends, and only with very old people. And Chinese might be school mediated to some degree. And Cantonese, of course, is mostly family mediated, but also because of the other Chinese speaking Cantonese, people shift over to that language. English and Dutch, of course, is reported as school languages. If we ask how well people speak these languages, and please consider 1 means very good and 5 means not at all, then we see that Hakka competence is highest in the oldest group of people and very bad among the young people, because many say they don't speak at all and very few can speak Hakka. Chinese remains at an intermediary level, and Cantonese remains in a self-assessment at a relatively good level. English, of course, is not known much by the older people, but is very well known by young people, and the same is true for Dutch language. How often do you speak which language? We see that the older people may speak Hakka with their peers, to some degree in Chinese, and more than Hakka, Cantonese. The young people rarely speak any Hakka. They speak sometimes Chinese, and more than that, they speak Cantonese, but they mostly speak Dutch. Very often, it is clear to the people that they are not able to transmit the language, even if there is some amount of linguistic sentimentalism, thinking how sad it is that the language is no longer transmitted. With which family members do you speak Hakka? Of course, we speak with the grandparents mostly, with father and mother to some degree, especially the old people. But the people do not speak Hakka with their spouses that much, and the young people not at all with their children and grandchildren. And of course, those who the old people attempting to speak with the younger generation, they cannot do that in a realistic, intensive way. So sometimes they use a little bit of Hakka. Yeah, I have to jump over that. Maybe who speaks what to whom? Yeah, okay. Maybe we come to conclusions already about the Dutch. This old man spent a lot of time collecting a dictionary of Hakka language. He is from Hong Kong and Suriname. So he came to Holland across Suriname, and he has a very good library of dictionaries of Chinese, and he attempted to create a dictionary of the Hakka language, knowing that it will get lost in the next generations. So let's come to an end here. The Hakka community in Holland for a linguist is, of course, just one of many small linguistic groups in an increasingly diverse society. And it is very, if you imagine why is a language not transmitted, then Abraham de Zwaan, a sociologist from Holland, would say, because every speaker has to guess which language might be communicatively useful in the future. And this just doesn't work for the very small, especially unwritten languages. So basically, in this time of the history, everywhere in the world, people opt for the standardized languages, which are maintained by some administrative body, typically a nation state. And even if there is a linguistic sentimentalism about losing the language, at the same time, it is just not possible to keep up a language which is communicatively not as useful as the central and supercentral languages. And we have also seen in the data the one hypercentral language, English, which is used worldwide as a second language, strictly for the communication with other nationals, is also very widespread these days. So we have to conclude, of course, that Hakka cannot be maintained under such conditions also in Europe. If you still listening, I want to shift over to the Hakkas in Austria and explain a few aspects of this as well. As you have heard in the interview at the beginning, there is one group of Hakkas in Austria who are actually from India, and that is particularly interesting. In Calcutta, there was a certain Tong Achio in the 19th century who started some businesses there and attracted Chinese laborers. Of course, the larger group, as in every other country, came in the 20th century, and there were Hakkas and Cantonese and Hokkien speakers and others, and they all took strictly ethnic professions. The Hakkas became quite wealthy in this situation because they were engaged in tanning of leather and selling leather products, because that is an impure profession for the Hindus. And so they could take this marginal economy and become specialist in that. Of course, the people in this area, they speak Hakka in their community, so much so that Indians working for Hakkas would actually learn Hakka language. They are not that good in Bengali, it seems, but they all speak Hindi and, of course, English, because they often attended English-speaking schools. After economic, political, and social problems, many of the Indian Hakkas moved away, the majority moving to Toronto, a small group going to Austria, even smaller groups going to United Kingdom, Sweden, Australia, and a few other places. In most recent times, it seems some of them also go to Taiwan. In Austria, they arrived with tourist visa between 1970 and 1990. At that time, the law changed, and it was no longer possible to arrive as a tourist and then be employed by a friend or brother or cousin in the Chinese restaurant, and through that process getting a residency permit. So they all came as tourists and simply stayed here. They had very little time to learn German, and since they were working in the same social group, mostly in Chinese restaurants, they had very little contact with the other Austrians, and very often either one person made the effort to learn some German, or they asked their children to translate. So the very old migrants in this group are still very bad at German. On the other hand, they are able to speak Hindi, and that makes them employ Indians, for example, for a takeaway service. So the Hakka Chinese are cooking, and the Indians, usually from Punjab, are bringing the food to the nearby hospital and so on. Originally, the old people have no competence at all in Putonghua, but they have learned to write Chinese in their school in Calcutta. in the beginning, so the old people have very endogamous worldview, and the men who came to Austria strictly wanted to marry a Hakka wife. This attitude is absolutely absent among the young people who now have very often Austrian girlfriends, with a few exceptions. So what else do I have to tell you? First of all, there are so few Chinese in Austria, only 30,000 plus 16,000 ethnic Chinese nationals, so 46,000 among 8 or 9 million people. And especially the first generation, but to some degree also the second generation, are almost exclusively employed in Chinese restaurants or have own Chinese restaurants. A small group of Hakkas managed to enter the postal service so that there was an entire cluster of employees in the Austrian post office who again did not need to learn German very well for their job and work together in the same space. There are more Hakkas from Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Taiwan in Austria, but I will not mention these people now. All in all, only 138 men migrated to Austria and married then very often from their own Indian community. And so we have now 560 Indian Hakkas in Austria, now including already the deceased persons, so alive 532. They do not live together. They live mostly in Vienna, but spread out all over the town. But they had the habit to meet each other every Saturday morning in a particular place. And this was for information, for finding a new job, for exchanging info. Since they are such a small group and have actually little contact with other groups in society, they are very much fixated on their major dialect, and outsiders, I mean Hakkas who are from other places, need to adapt to their accent in order to speak with them. For the young people, it is even worse. Even the young people can speak Hakka, but are very quickly overwhelmed by another accent. They have never heard any Hakka speaker from outside this group of 500 people. So that makes it, of course, difficult for them to have a more robust competence. We helped them form an association, and that boosted their Hakka identity to some degree. And last year at the World Hakka Conference, we met quite a few of them because with their association, they were now able to attend and travel to China. I said that most old speakers are not very good German speakers. This man is a kind of an exception. He is half Tibetan, by the way, and he managed to pick up colloquial Austrian German so well that you feel very comfortable talking to him. So this is one of the few people who are able to just pick up a language from practice in the street without regular training. Of course, their learning of Chinese was in Hakka pronunciation back there in Bimi Hoktong, in Peimei Xietang. And the people in, some young people in Austria attempted to learn actually Chinese, to study even Chinese, so somewhat in search of their identity. However, these people do not identify with China by and large, but with India. And the young people are very much used to going back to India for Chinese New Year to meet relatives. The young people are not even aware that quite a few of the words they are using in their Hakka are Hindi. But the outsiders, for instance, this Malaysian speaker here, is aware of that. Malaysian Hakka, I mean. Yeah, the parents are, you might say, a little bit conservative and bound in their Chinese values and are slightly unhappy with the Europeanization of their children. However, when we ask the children, then we see that they actually want to please their parents very much and consider it important to have learned Hakka. And the young people are, of course, weak speakers and admit that they often mix in German words into their Hakka language. So here you can see this Ngadjungin Ngane Großeltern Han Jupetke generation. So German and English in the Hakka of a young speaker. Yeah. This young speaker actually reported how difficult it is to explain her identity to her peer group, because she identifies completely with Indian origin, and that of course is surprising to other people because she looks Chinese. So that gives you an idea. They have developed their own cuisine, and you can see from this Hakka Chinese restaurant in Austria, in Vienna, that they are offering Indian food and Hakka food at the same time. So I believe that maybe you want me to come to an end already, or shall I go on?
Hi, Prof. You may go on. We still have
fine.
time.
Yeah. So our investigations led to a renewed interest in younger people, because same as in Malaysia and in Netherlands, the young people at teenage age usually stop attending the group meetings. And when we came along, they attended a seminar on Hakka identity, and we explained to them what it actually means to be Hakka. Since they did not know very much, you can already estimate that that for them, Hakka identity is probably restricted to their own very small group of people in Vienna and in India and in Toronto. So that's what they understand as Hakka, because that is the only context in which the younger generation has ever experienced the Hakka language. We have also asked them how they communicate with their family members. And while the Indian Hakkas speak Hakka very well, it's absolutely their first language, and the Austrians are theoretically able to speak Hakka, but they all shifted to English because of the relatives from Toronto. The young people in Toronto cannot speak Hakka at all. And for this reason, English is the language of choice for interfamilial communication across the globe. So you can imagine it is a very small group of 530 people, which maintained a very enclosed subgroup of society, mostly because of the linguistic problems, I would say, which restricted their possibilities to working with their friends in a small number of restaurants. And the young people, of course, they are not so much interested in the culture of the old people. And for that reason, they rather assimilate to the general culture as Chinese Austrians, and none of the younger people expects to transmit the language to their children. Speaking of children, of course, the Chinese group shows the same problem as the autochthonous Austrian group. The now 30-year-olds are still not married, and if I'm not mistaken, there are only 2 third-generation children by now in this group of people. So we cannot say more about a follow-up. Okay. Hakka language is strictly an identity marker of the families. And yeah, I mentioned already, people don't know, the young people don't know much about Hakka, and are also typically not too interested in that. Now I was a little bit fast, but maybe I leave time for discussion, and you can ask me things which you are interested in. Thank you very much.